Now, President Trump's social media summit, which happened yesterday, was about what you would expect when you invite a slew of right wing extremists, conspiracy theorists, and just flat out bigots. Now, there are people like Ali Alexander. Now, this is a person who said that Kamala Harris wasn't black enough or something, or wasn't an African American black. And then you had a meme smith who goes by the screen name Carpe Dunctum, right? You also had such distinguished guests as conspiracy blogger Jim Hoft of the venerable publication The Gateway Pundit. Now, those are just some of the guests. There are also other notable guests, but also some notable people that were missing, and we'll get to that. But during this summit of what could be considered some of the worst people on the internet, Trump decided to go after free speech. Well, now that is very interesting. What did he say? Let's take a look.
China will admit there's nobody like these brains, but they're not using that brilliance, and they're not using what we gave them fairly, and they have to do that. And we don't want to stifle anything. We certainly don't want to stifle free speech, but that's no longer free speech. See, I don't think that the mainstream media is free speech either, because it's so crooked, it's so dishonest. So to me, free speech is not when you see something good and then you purposely write bad. To me, that's very dangerous speech, and you become angry at it. But that's not free speech.
That's not free speech. Why? Because I get angry at it. Wait, what? Hold on. So for those of you, and this seems to be a misconception about what free speech actually means, it just means that the government cannot imprison or censor you for having an opinion and speaking your opinion. Now, you can get in trouble for threats, because that's not free speech, or, harassment, that's not free speech. You also have, of course, incitement of riot. That's also not considered free speech, fire in a crowded theater, et cetera, right? But you have the government, basically, that cannot, under normal circumstances, if you have an opinion, even a negative opinion of a political figure, like the President of the United States, it's why, you can't get thrown in jail for that. That's why during the Obama administration, for example, you could say all sorts of horrible things that President Obama, he's a Kenyan Muslim socialist. He wants to bring down America and is probably the Antichrist. That is why the Obama administration couldn't send their goons to knock down your door and haul you away to prison. Couldn't do that. Free speech. That's what free speech means. Now, if people write something bad about you based on information that they have, and they have an opinion, right? And it's not, considered libel, because there are libel laws as well. That is considered freedom of the press. Now, if you go out of your way to write something that is damaging and completely untrue, well, then, of course, you can have libel laws. But then the line on that is actually a little blurry, right? Because then there are public figures versus, private figures and citizens. And, of course, public figures, I think there's a lot more leeway in the stuff that you can say about them, right? Again, this is why people, for example, on the right could say the most heinous things about President Obama and not get in trouble for it, because Obama is a public figure and now Donald Trump is as well. I mean, this is literally in the First Amendment, freedom of the press. But apparently Donald Trump, of course, has a problem with people writing what he considers to be fake news. Now, what does he consider fake news? Well, he said it. Anything that makes him angry, that he thinks is not true. Oh, okay. Now, again, going back to our Obama example, if the President Trump is so angry about people writing what he considers to be false things, or just generally writing false things, where was he during the birther conspiracy, where they said Obama was not born in America and therefore illegitimate president, and he's a Kenyan Muslim socialist put here to destroy America? Where was Trump? Oh, right, he was spreading that conspiracy. Oops. I don't think he was so adamant about clamping down on that kind of speech then. Fake news. I wonder what changed. Oh, right. So now, again, you heard he took the time to slam the press. He said that the mainstream media is not the free press either, which they are. Literally have protections under the Constitution that says that the press is, protected by the Constitution. It is considered free speech and freedom of the press. And look, muckrakers, right? So there's a traditional word for that, word for people who write inflammatory pieces. That's being a muckraker. That is the tradition of journalism, holding people in power accountable through their muckraking, right? And that's what the press has been doing when it comes to Donald Trump. Now, I wish the press has been that aggressive during the Obama administration in pointing out things that he's actually done that we don't agree with, that aren't good things. But at least we're having some of that. The press is slightly better now because of the Trump era. But anyway, so now he also said later on that, quote, "We're not going to just allow it to happen like this. We're not going to be silenced." Literally, Donald Trump is the most powerful person in the world. And he's like, "I will not be silenced." Really. So now I want you to pay attention to some of those words, because right after the summit ended and they all went to the Rose Garden, right? And Donald Trump, William Barr had actually left after announcing something about immigration, ICE raids, etc. After they went back in, this was the scene at the Rose Garden.
Threatening me in the Rose Garden. You are a punk. You know the journalist, you're a punk.
You should not be attacking journalists like this.
For the record, he'd kick your punk ass. Oh my God.
Okay, so that's interesting. Now, one of the people that were there, and the video cut off too short, actually, one of the people there was Joy Villa. Now, she is known as being somebody who spread the QAnon conspiracy theory. And she said, well, fake news is over. Fake news is over. We love real journalists, but fake news is over. Says the person who's literally pushing a conspiracy that is fake news. QAnon. Now, as far as Gorka, who he was yelling at, getting into a reporter's face, calling him a punk, well, that was Playboy correspondent Brian Karem. Isn't it funny how a Playboy correspondent could actually do better journalism than a lot of these right-wing bloggers that were invited? Remember, you had James O'Keefe, who was filming this as well, Sebastian Gorka, as I said before, and the guy from, not from InfoWars, but he had a guy from the Gateway Pundit, which, of course, again, comes up with lies and conspiracy theories literally all the time. I mean, remember the blown-out so-called orbital socket on one of the guys who had shot, what was it, Mike Brown? So, yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of fake news here, right? Now, as bad as this was, reporters, people get into a reporter's face. It actually could have been worse. And why do I say that? It's because prior to this, the Daily Beast had reported that the people who have actually been banned from social media for harassing behavior, etc., or breaking TOS, weren't actually invited to this so-called social media summit. So they had no Facebook, no Twitter. They were not invited. And you also didn't invite the people who were actually banned from social media. And the whole purpose of this was to whine about how conservatives were being mistreated in social media. That is hilarious. Now, who wasn't invited? Well, Laura Loomer, who is an anti-Muslim activist, she was not invited. You also had Alex Jones, of course, not invited, and Proud Boys Men Group founder Gavin McInnes. Now, you might think, okay, well, wait a minute. Why didn't they get invited to this? They were banned off social media. And so, well, they would want their voices to be heard by President Trump, right? Right? It must have been an accident. No, no accident. On purpose. Here we have a quote here from one senior Trump administration official familiar with the planning. Now, they told the Daily Beast, quote, "What benefit would it be to anyone if Laura Loomer were in the same room with the president?" Why on earth would we do that? We aren't that stupid. Come on. Hilarious. Oh, no, we're not that stupid. I mean, we could invite Laura Loomer, and we could invite Alex Jones, which, by the way, Donald Trump has been on Alex Jones' show before. And so he has a deep appreciation for the work that Alex does. And yet, wouldn't invite him. Wouldn't invite him because the administration said, oh my God, why would you invite these people? They're crazy. They're insane people. We're not that stupid. Okay. Now, what's funny about that is that left the right wing absolutely enraged. You had InfoWars hosts, of course, going off because apparently they were found to be too crazy even for the White House, for the Trump White House. So what you saw here earlier in that video was an acceptable level of crazy. Acceptable. Now, of course, the whole thing would be kind of hilarious, except for the real threats against the press. Not just Gorka getting in somebody's face, you know, and calling them, ooh, yeah, you're a punk, you're a punk. Okay, whatever, right? You can have an opinion. Act like a tough guy. Don't care. Don't care. But no, it's Trump's tacit approval of all this. And also the rhetoric. By the way, afterwards, he said Sebastian Gorka had won. That's what he tweeted out. Okay. But no, the real problem here is, again, calling the press fake news, calling them the enemy of the people for having either an opinion, which you're allowed to have, and also reporting things factually, which they've done. He said, it's when he said, we're not going to allow it to happen like this. We're not going to be silent or silenced. When the president of the United States is so ignorant about the Constitution, about the freedom of the press, and what free speech actually means, that's a big problem for all of those things. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.